Orlando, Florida. You're now listening to the OZone Podcast, the voice of Orlando Magic fans. Join us every week for a unique fan perspective on all of the latest Magic news and updates. The show starts now.
Welcome back to another episode of the OZone Podcast, brought to you by DraftKings and now part of the Basketball Podcast Network. We're your hosts, Al, myself, Anthony, and today is July 16th, and we're about 13 days away from the NBA draft, and today we got a special guest joining us from the Penny and Pops Podcast, Adam Papageorgiou. What's going on?
It's a pleasure to be on here with you guys, and it gets excited now. We're within 2 weeks away from the draft. It really starts picking up.
Yeah, we are so close, and there's so many different mock drafts that's going on. A lot of different words from different workouts that's happening. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in this episode. But before we get to that, Adam, for those that aren't familiar with you, explain to us exactly what's your tie-in with the Magic, your experience, and tell us how you became a fan.
Well, I am born and raised in Orlando. The franchise is about as old as I am, so. I'm 33, so I mean the franchise is about that old, depending on how you count it. But I mean, I've been a Magic fan since I could put memories together. Which I mean, Shaq showed up in '92, so I would have been 4 years old. So that's pretty good timing right there. But it was easy to be a Magic fan at a young age. I've been through some good times. I've been through some bad times, and I started my own little blog when I was at the University of Central Florida, and then from there I got picked up by the old owner of MagicBasketballOnline.com, Brian Serra, to do some writing back in 2012 after the Dwight Howard trade, and so I got to see a lot of bad Magic teams and got to cover a lot of bad Magic teams for about 5 years. And the only thing that's kind of held over from those days is the Penny and Pops podcast. So it's fun doing that. And it's exciting to see so many other Magic podcasts kind of sprouting and succeed. And hopefully if the team gets better, then that means more success for guys like you.
As soon as the team gets better, it makes it a lot easier. That's for sure. Now, let me ask you. So it's interesting, right? Because when it comes to like the workouts and some of these teams having interviews with these players, just recently there was a report that came out that Dwayne Casey, the head coach of the Detroit Pistons, was asking his interview questions with some of the players. And one of the interesting questions that kind of got a little of attention was he was asking these players if they made their bed in the morning. So, Adam, I'm going to ask you. When you wake up in the morning, do you make your bed? And his philosophy is that if a player does make their bed in the morning, that's the first thing that they do. He said that it can indicate whether or not they set the tone for their day and if they're an organized individual. Do you make your bed in the morning?
I do, but it doesn't require much effort for me. Like I don't know, I'm not that hard of a sleeper, so it's just kind of I just gotta fix my comforter on top and I'm good. So that takes like 30 seconds. So I guess it just depends on your bed situation. It's like how much of an effort is it to organize your sleeping situation. But it's a very interesting question. Throughout the years, and anybody can look online for certain questions that happen with draft prospects. Some people get asked some very weird stuff. This isn't weird per se. It's just kind of a kind of an odd question that if they do even throw out to draft guys, maybe he was messing around with the media, but with that response was Casey. But I don't think it equates to what Dwayne wanted to equate to. I think putting your bed together in the morning, it's kind of like an automatic thing in my mind.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to be organized and make your bed. I will say that I'm the opposite. I don't make my bed in the morning and I'm super unorganized. So that would go the opposite on my end. Al, if you're interviewing somebody, if you're interviewing a player, what out of the box question would you ask? I feel in a job interview, like an out of the box question would be, sell me this pen. How would you sell me this pen? I feel like that would kind of fall in the same line of, do you make your bed in the morning? But what would be a question that you would ask?
See, you caught me off guard because I was going to ask that question to Adam. So I'm trying to think here to my manager days when I used to interview applicants. But I would go with a simple, basic one, because I want to see what the player thinks of himself. So I would go with something as simple as, hey, where are you going to be in 5 years from now as a player? So just kind of give me some direction as to what do you think you can become as an NBA player. That it's not as a wacky question as the Dwayne Casey one. But I'll throw it back to you, Adam, because I had that saved for you. But what about you? What would you ask kind of as a wacky question to a future NBA player?
So I have in my actual job that I get paid to actually live off of, I'm in HR. So, I mean, if you really want to throw a person a loop, you just simply ask them what their weakness is and just kind of step back and see how they react to that. Because the way somebody responds to that, it can go a million ways.
It depends on whether or not they want to be honest. Like if it's me, I'm giving you one of my strengths as my weakness, and then you just gotta know that I have no weaknesses, right?
So so you're kind of answering it how you kind of are supposed to answer it in a way,
Exactly.
But it's also they kind of want to look at you to see if you're a liar or if you're a good liar or if you're a motivated person or a very unsure person. There's a lot of ways you can go into that when you ask that question.
Or you can be an individual that can accept vulnerability. Now we're getting deep.
Hey, they ask deep questions. Be ready to give deep answers.
Our listeners got a free little lesson today from Adam about HR questions, and so that's a freebie from us today.
Yeah.
I'm not even in like talent recruiting or anything, but like that's something that's something that anybody goes through, and in any type of occupation you get involved with, let alone trying to make millions of dollars in the NBA. That's a question that you got to be prepared to answer.
Now, Adam, what do you think? Do you think that when it comes to interview questions, how much weight do you put in how that process goes? So, for example, if a player like projected number one draft pick Cade Cunningham, if he goes out and he kills his workout, he's already projected number one, but he absolutely bombs his interview. Do you feel as if that process alone would impact maybe a front office decision to take him number one?
I mean, I think some front offices, like the one, like the current Magic one with Jeff Weltman and John Hammond, I think it does. The Magic, they go for good character people overall. So part of that is being able to answer questions in a respectable manner for the most part. I think it does. Now, this is a weird situation because I think most people would say that Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green are by far the top two guys. So there's a weight aspect to it, but I think it would impact for sure. I personally, look, I don't care how talented you are. If you don't seem like a stable individual or someone that can handle like the pressures of having a franchise on your shoulders, I'm going to factor that in.
Yeah, and I think that the perfect example of that is there's been a lot of talks of who the Magic are going to select number 5. People in the beginning was automatically assumed that Kuminga would fall to that number 5, but we've been seeing a lot of Scottie Barnes possibly making it into that top 5. And I think that if you are in a position where you kind of don't know where you're going to land at that 5 or who to go with, that could be that one extra step that might put it over the edge. Now, recently, we had the really big news where we decided that, hey, we're going to hire Mr. Jamal Mosley as a head coach of the Orlando Magic. So since our last episode, there's been a lot of media coming out from Jamal Mosley with his press conference, with the interview that he had with the Pod Squad, and also recently with the Woj Pod. What were some of your takeaways? Adam, I'll go with you first. From the press conference, what are some of the things that stood out to you? What did you like? What was your feeling in regards to now hearing a little bit from the new coach?
Look, I would say 99% of Magic fans had no clue who Jamal Mosley was until a couple weeks ago. So in situations where you're a very low profile candidate and you get a job like a head coach in the NBA, you have to win the interview to begin with, that opening interview. And I thought he crushed it. I thought he hit it out of the park. I thought he said what Magic fans needed to hear. He said what probably the players in the roster and at least the current Magic roster needed to hear as well, as far as just his attitude, his approach. He he broke down defensive, offensive philosophies or insights in a very simple manner. And he didn't leave much doubt in my mind as far as what he wants to do. Now, he's got to go out and do the hard part and actually do it. But everything that he said, probably the one thing that was maybe a negative, and it's not even a negative, it's more of, when he was whipping out the term family a lot. We got out on Twitter, all those Fast and the Furious, Vin Diesel, those family memes out there, that was running through my head. But I mean, other than that, I heard what I wanted to hear, and I couldn't have expected him to do any better than that. I can recall when Jacques Vaughn got hired by the Magic in 2012, because a lot of people are going to compare Jamal Mosley to Jacques Vaughn, be it correctly or incorrectly, and just Mosley's energy. And I mean, look, people called Jacques Vaughn the Prince of Positivity for a very long time as well, but just Mosley's approach is different from Jacques Vaughn's, and it's one that I would feel optimistic for what he could potentially do with this roster, where maybe when we first heard of the Mosley hiring, you couldn't say that necessarily.
We heard a lot of teaching. We heard a lot of educating. He was very, very positive. I would agree. I heard the word family about 900 times. The only thing that I would say that wasn't too crazy of, and I expect it because I feel like this is kind of the way that the front office rolls, is that he was really sticking to talking points. And granted, it's the first introductory press conference. You kind of expect it. One of the things I really didn't like is the words that he was saying was great, but I felt like the responses were really, really short. And it wasn't until we got to the Pod Squad interview that I felt like you were able to kind of see his personality a lot more. He felt a little more settled in. And granted, you get your first head coaching gig, your first press conference. It's a little, anyone can be nervous. And I felt like I heard the nervousness a little bit. But overall, I thought it was, you couldn't really ask for more. Al, what did you think? What was your reaction?
Same thing that Adam said. I think he did an amazing job, whether he was prepped or not for the interview. I'm sure there were some talking points that he kind of stuck to as the interview went along. But like you mentioned, a lot of key words that he kept repeating: communication, family, togetherness, teaching, growing together. All things that just make sense for this roster, right? It's a young team. They got to grow together. But like you mentioned, he seemed a little bit nervous, a little bit rushed in his responses at the press conference. Then when he went to the Pod Squad, the Woj interview, he kind of got it down. That was his second day on the job. He seemed a little more comfortable. What I really, really liked, and I don't think you guys touched on this yet, is actually seeing him on the court already with Mo Bamba. We saw that video, and I think Twitter kind of went crazy because we need a coach that gets on Mo right away and puts a body on him and teaches him how to position himself on the court. I feel like Mo never learned that in his past 3 seasons with us. So seeing that day 2 or 3 on the job was really exciting for me. But again, he's got to go out there now and prove it. It all sounds great. Let's actually now get to it and do the job.
I do also want to add there was a huge difference between how he acted in the press conference and the podcast, especially the Orlando Magic Pod Squad. Now, for the Magic Pod Squad interview, he did that in person. He did that in the same room with those guys. True, whereas for the actual presser, it's Absolutely. Zoom calls. And some of the media guys were having problems with the actual technology too on the Zoom call. So there some nerves and kind of being a little flustered. I'm not going to nitpick with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was in person, but I also feel as if he was able to really express himself differently. But again, it's because it was done in person. It was cool hearing his stories and even with the Woj pod, talking about his experience and his relationship with Billups and how he became in the development role and how he came up that way. So if you haven't listened to if you just listened to the introductory press conference, highly recommend listening to the Pod Squad and also the Woj pod, because you do get a sense of, you get to see a little bit more of his personality. And then just to touch on the video that we saw of him working out with Mo, I loved it, man. The fact that he was actually in there, and you can tell that he was in his element. He was coaching, he was teaching, but he was even getting physical with Mo Bamba. He was giving him the elbow and the body and kind of showing what he's expecting. And the fact that I'm not sure if it was the first person that he worked with. I'm assuming that it is. If you're Mo Bamba, yeah, that can only be like, if that doesn't get him excited, uplifted, doesn't get him motivated to want to do more in this new environment, then I really don't know what else could be. But I think that it's a really, really good opportunity for him to kind of grow and move forward for this season. Adam, what did you think about the workout? Did we kind of touch a bit on anything, or do you feel as if he's just doing the exact same thing that Clifford would have done if he was still coaching the Magic?
Well, I mean, look, he says he's 6'8". I think I don't know if
he looked taller.
I think it was the angle, but I don't know. He kind of made Mo Bamba look a little bad actually when he was defending him. He was maybe there's some of the MMA kind of training, and he's got a stronger lower base than Mo, but he definitely made Mo work for some of those buckets. So hopefully, again, as you guys said, it should be encouraging to Bamba. And look, Clifford, he can't play post defense against a guy that's a foot taller than him. So in that regard, I would assume Jamal Mosley's the tallest coach in Magic history. I don't think anyone actually mentioned that, but
that's true.
Being at 6'8", I don't think Matty Gukas was that tall, but I think he was like 6'4", 6'6". But it's good that it's just showing that he's getting involved right away, and you could even see if you're following some of the Magic players on their Instagrams or social media, like some of them are getting into the Magic gym, and clearly Jamal's, at least if not working out with them, talking to them at least, and it's getting to work quick.
And then the next step is obviously hiring some assistant coaches to join him on his staff. How do you think that they should go with that route? Everything that we've heard, it doesn't sound as if he's selecting his guys. It sounds like it's going to be a collective agreement from both the front office and him, and they're all going to decide together. Do you think that they should go towards a more veteran approach, or do you think that they may go on specifically only coaches that focus on the same thing that he focuses on, which is the developing and the educating portion?
I'll go for this one. So I actually do have a list of potential candidates here too, but at the end of the day, it comes down to who are you familiar with, and Mosley's gonna pick, if not all of his guys on the bench, most of them. It's just a matter of, again, kind of teaming up with Weltman and Hammond and kind of just coming to an agreement, because Jamal Mosley's been assistant coach in the NBA for like 14 years. That's a lot of years. That's a lot of coaching staffs where he was in Denver, he was in Cleveland, and then he had the most amount of time in Denver and Dallas, with the Mavericks under Rick Carlisle. But I mean, you have to mix it up, because Mosley's known more as a defensive specialist. So you're going to need some, if you want to do that, pace, space, simple offense type of thing, you got to get some offensive guys. So, I got a couple guys down here, but I mean, Al, you can comment first as far as just kind of what type of, staff he should put together or how that comes together. But you have to have a good mixture, be it you can have an 80-year-old guy as one of your assistants, and then also like a 20-something-year-old guy. The age part doesn't matter. You need guys that specialize in certain aspects. That's going to get everything well-rounded at the end. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, so I think the key for him is going to be adding some experience to that bench. Hopefully, that lead assistant, somebody who with experience that has a strong offensive history in the league. So again, a name that I brought last week. Again, not sure how you feel about this, Adam, but was Terry Stotts. I know that was the first name that came up when the Magic job opened up. I would go back to that. I think they either worked together in Denver or in Dallas. I forgot where it was, but there's some familiarity there between the two of them. So that's a name that to me is interesting. It will make a lot of sense. Now, he would have to be paid well by the Magic for him to sit on that bench and be an assistant coach. But that would be a name that to me just makes a lot of sense.
Well, there's no more NBA coaching jobs available basically because Wes Unseld Jr. is likely going to get the Wizards job and Willie Green's going to get the Pelicans job. So there's two former Magic guys, be it on the bench or players. But so unless Mike Budenholzer gets fired by the Bucks, which that'd be something if Milwaukee won the championship or and Budenholzer still gets fired, but. Terry Stotts, I don't know if him and Mosley actually work together, but their ties together are through George Karl. So George Karl was the head coach in Denver when Mosley got on the bench. But Terry Stotts, who I think he's like 63 years old, but Stotts was an assistant coach on those Seattle Supersonics teams under George Karl, and then also for the Milwaukee Bucks. So for like about a decade, he was an assistant in those two places for him. So there's got to be some type of tie in there, and Stotts would be a good pick for lead assistant. And look, you and I aren't writing the checks, so whatever you got to pay him, pay him. But he can clearly run a good offense, and that's what we need. Whether you question maybe if he can be a head coach for this team, we don't have to worry about that now because when you're an assistant, it's completely different. So that's a good pick. You guys got any other picks for assistants potentially?
I honestly, when we think about who could be the exact opposite and really focus on the offensive side, I really don't see another name that would be considered a grade A pick. I think that I want to say they had mentioned it during the press conference for the Blazers that I think that his Terry Stotts' defense ranked, I want to say it was like 29th in the NBA, or it was in the late 20s.
It's low. It's low.
It's very low.
Just look at the score lines for those for those teams. But
exactly. But the offense was in the top 10, and so if you're looking for someone that is directly the opposite, I really don't see another name other than Terry Stotts. I think that would be a 100% steal and would be a very, very big power ammunition pick to add to your coaching staff. So I mean, we'll see. Do you expect for them to hire the assistant coaches within the next week, before the draft, a little bit after? What would you think would be the best approach? Al?
Well, summer league starting in less than a month. So you would think you want to have that staff ready at least by the draft. So that means these guys get to town, press conferences, get to the gym, and they head to Las Vegas right away. So I would think in the next 2 weeks, you're going to have a staff in place for the Magic, or at least you hope that's the case.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if it's by next week, honestly. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if the Magic end up keeping one of Clifford's guys, because Steve Clifford's not going to be an NBA head coach next season. So, a couple of those guys come to mind for me, like Pat Delaney or Steve Kreutzer. It'd be interesting to see, just from a familiarity standpoint, for some of the guys on the roster, if they actually kept one of those guys. I mean, those are really good assistant coaches. If they don't end up on Mosley's staff, they're going to end up somewhere else one way or another. It's funny because during the press conference too, and also during the some of the podcasts he jumped on, did Mosley, that he kept mentioning two names, Tim Grgurich and John Welsh as big influences. Now, Grgurich, I think, is on Detroit staff, but he's 79 years old. So I don't know if he's going to go that route. But Welsh is interesting because that guy's an offensive-minded coach. He's 59 years old, and he was on he last coached on the Clippers back in 2020. And so he's free. He's available. So I would actually be surprised if he didn't end up on Mosley's squad as a familiar face and as a guy that he's worked with, in Denver for numerous years.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different directions that they can go. Now, you bring up an interesting point, or more of a reminder. Clifford is not going to be a head coach in the NBA next season. Are you surprised by that? Are you surprised at the fact that he is going to be jobless? Adam?
I am personally surprised. Now, I think because of the mutual termination, he's technically getting paid by the team next season. So he can take the year off, I guess. But I'm surprised. I really thought in him leaving the Magic that I thought he was going to get that Indiana job, and then Rick Carlisle left Dallas, and then he ended up in Indy anyway. So I guess it really just goes to show that Steve just did not want to be in a rebuilding situation. It's a lot of stress. It's hard losing. It's really hard losing. And, we're going to see with Jamal Mosley now too, if how he handles that. But it weighs a lot of coaches down, and Clifford just did not want to do it, and it surprised me that he's not going to be. He didn't have another head coaching gig lined up. It really is.
Yeah, hopefully Jamal Mosley's positivity can really, hold down for a little while, because it's kind of the similar story. We, the Magic, we're going to fight. We're young, but there's going to be some tough times on the way. So we'll see. Now, now draft is coming up. There's a lot of talks of the first and the second pick, and it's solidified with Jalen Green and Cade Cunningham. Very, very difficult. That we know for a fact that those players aren't going to drop. And we're seeing that the Detroit Pistons, Houston Rockets, they're really solid and sold on those two. So my question to you, Adam, is who are your favorites for the 5th and the 8th pick? And should the Magic hold on to both? Is it a good idea for the Orlando Magic to bring home 2 rookies and add them already to a very, very, very young roster?
Yeah, I think, gosh, do the Magic have like 9 guys under the age of 24? I can't remember now. It's something. It's
a lot.
It's a lot of young guys, but you're in a rebuild, and we don't have a bona fide star. So it's one of those where, do you take as many chances as you can on guys that you draft, or do you trade up? I would be very surprised if the Magic don't trade up. Whether it's packaging 5 and 8, or packaging 5 and 1, either the Bulls 2023 pick, or Denver's 2025 pick, or another future Magic first to move up. Jalen Green's the guy for me. I really think Jalen Green can still be had. I think it's going to take, it's probably, you're going to have to take bad contracts back from either Houston or Cleveland in one of those spots. But and Houston's got more bad contracts than Cleveland does. It's with Cleveland, you either got to take Kevin Love or Colin Sexton, and Jalen Green's the guy. But if the Magic stay put at 5 and 8, I am not that big on Evan Mobley or Jalen Suggs or Scottie Barnes. So for me, I'm looking more towards, and I think he's going to rise. I think Moses Moody is going to rise up. How high he's going to rise, I don't know if you can get him at 8. He might go before 8. But it's between Moody and like Kuminga for me at 5. That's where I'm at if the Magic stay put at 5, is Moody or Kuminga. And I actually like Moody more than Kuminga.
Yeah, Moody is he's just had his workout with the Golden State Warriors. He had posted on his social media that he was having dinner with the Warriors front office. So he could be a player that Golden State Warriors may like and may take with that 7th pick. So if you're not fully sold on him at 5, but you do want him at 8, again, Warriors have their eyes on them. Now it's interesting. You would really take Moody at 5.
I'm big on that guy's skill set. Like think about it. He's 6'5". He covers the wingspan thing. He's got the 7-foot wingspan. We've all seen the photo that I can't remember which NBA guy sent it out, but it's him where he's touching like the carpet all the way up to the top of his door frame.
Yep.
Yeah. It's insane. And that was back when he was in high school, but he's a very, very good shooter. He is one of the best 3-point shooters in this draft. But he's not like a simple 3-and-D guy. Like if you watch what he did at Arkansas, like that, and he's young. That's the other thing, is unlike say like Buddy Hield when he came out, I think for Oklahoma, I think he was like 22 years old. This guy's like 20 years old, 19 years old still, is Moody, and he's got the ability to be your go-to scorer. I really think so. And I'm just big on Moody. It's one of those things where recently I've gone away more from what draft experts want to tell me is the top guys. And it kind of worked out for me last year, because I thought the top guys in last year's draft that were like in at least the late top 10 range were going to be Halliburton and RJ Hampton. And Hampton fell, but I think RJ Hampton's going to be awesome for the Magic. So, yep. And it worked out that we ended up trading for him. But I'm a Moody guy. I am. I don't know. You guys. What are your preferences?
So, go ahead.
Go ahead, Al.
So I was going to say, Kuminga, I think, is a name that we've seen at 5, but as Anthony can tell you, I'm huge on Moody as well. Like, I know at the number 8 spot, we keep talking about Moody or Book Night and all this kind of stuff. I've always said Moody's my guy. Like, just watching tape on the guy, he's a shooter. And one thing about the Magic is we don't really have solid shooters. We haven't had solid shooters in forever. He fits that bucket. He plays defense. He's got the wingspan and the body ready for the NBA. So to me, he fills a lot of different buckets that just make sense. Now, is he the guy to pick at 5? That's going to be tough because, again, if Kuminga's there, say a guy like Suggs drops, there's so much hype around those guys that from just earlier in the season, the projections of those guys are going to be the top 5 for sure. Will the front office have the guts to say, you know what, we're going to skip all that and draft a guy that we just feel good about, like Moody, or are they going to feel that pressure to go and draft a guy like Suggs just because of the pressure that they have? It's going to be tough. But I'm like you, man. I really like Moody a lot. He fits again with the team from day one. And at number 8, I'm sold on a bunch of different guys. I can't decide yet on number 8.
Yeah, and I think this front office, they've never been the type to feel any type of pressure. They move at the beat of their own drum, and they decide they do whatever it is that they want to do without there being any type of pressure. Now, what's interesting is you have the 5th, you have the 8th, but then you also have that 33rd pick. And the 33rd pick is still low enough to where you can still get a quality player out of it. So I definitely foresee some type of trade happening. I just really hope that we're not worried about Kuminga, we're not worried about Moses Moody, and we find a way to get into that top 3 and try to steal away Jalen Green. Now, just taking a look at the different mock drafts that's out there, USA Today has the Magic selecting Kuminga at 5, Jaden Springer at 8. The Ringer has Kuminga at 5 and Franz Wagner at 8. NBA Draft.net has Scottie Barnes at 5 and then Moses Moody at 8. NBA.com, Kuminga at 5, Book Night at 8. Wouldn't be mad with that one. NBC Sports has Kuminga at 5 and Keon Johnson at 8. Now, Adam, if you're not getting Moses Moody and he's not available, your choices are between James Book Night, Keon Johnson, or do any of those names are those people that you would be happy with? If you miss out on Moses Moody, if you miss out on the top, the top 3, top 4, you mentioned you're not fully sold on Suggs or Mobley. What would be the best outcome for you? Like, what would you take home knowing that you will still be excited about this upcoming season?
I mean, is Kuminga still available? Because then I'd probably take him 5 then, if that's the case. But I mean, at 8, I'm not a Book Night guy. Like I watch it and there's certain limitations, and he's got that tunnel vision sometimes that gets him in trouble. Like the film looks good, but you also got to look closely against who he's going up against, because some of those guys he's going up against, they're not pro caliber. So that's the other thing. But I like Josh Giddey. Like I keep trying to turn away from it, but seeing how LaMelo Ball actually went through his lumps, and he looked like a terrible shooter in Australia and in the NBL, and people thought that he was going to be just a complete bust offensively. And to see, LaMelo Ball and, rookie of the year, and the guy can shoot now all of a sudden, and seeing what Josh Giddey can potentially do at his size at 6'8", he's some type of athletic version of Joe Ingles, like a much more athletic version of Joe Ingles, where that guy can be almost like in a Hito Turkoglu role, where he can be the 6'8" kind of wing small forward type guy, but he can run an offense but at a much faster pace. So it's one of those where, look, the Magic aren't trying to make the playoffs this next season, so you can take risks on guys that maybe you got to either build up their body or you got to build up their shooting. So I think Moody would be a home run pick at 5, and I like Giddey at 8 as a guy that has a really high ceiling, and that's what you got to do. Is you got to take big swings. You got to find your stars, and that's where I'm going with that.
I got to ask you, Adams, a follow-up question. What are your thoughts on Corey Kispert from Gonzaga?
He's great for a team that's trying to compete for a title. I mean, he's basically Joe Harris. He's He's probably better athletically than Joe Harris, actually. I think his athleticism is underrated, but you don't need kind of those secondary pieces on this Magic team. You don't. You need to go get that star somehow. If you can get in, getting them through the draft is the best way to do it at the moment until a trade kind of presents itself. But I like Kispert, but he'll probably get picked late lottery, like maybe like around 11, 12, something like that. But just not for this Magic team. Like, we don't need just kind of these secondary pieces. The Magic need guys that can be all-stars.
Just think about adding Giddey. You would have Giddey, Mosley, RJ Hampton, and then also James Ennis, who had experience with the Australian League. That'd be a lot of Australian influence on one NBA roster. That'd be fun to watch. Now, Adam, we're gonna jump into our mailbag where we asked some of our followers on Instagram to submit their questions for today's episode. And one of the questions comes from Omar_OMD_, where he asks, if trading into the top 3 isn't available, would you trade out for a young player like Sexton? Would that be a good route for the Orlando Magic?
I wouldn't do it. Not for Sexton, because I would do it, and I don't consider Sexton a potential star. Like, I'd rather have Fultz over Sexton. I'd rather give those minutes to RJ Hampton and Cole Anthony. Like, Colin Sexton, very good player, like just really, really high motor, just works for everything. He just hustles it just amazingly. It's insane, just kind of that attitude. But he rubs people the wrong way, and he rubs teammates the wrong way for whatever specific reasons. Maybe he hustles so much he makes them look bad sometimes. Who knows? But I wouldn't do it for Colin Sexton. Now, look, I mentioned Moses Moody, right? So if you think that you can get him at 8, then why not trade back then? If you can't move up and get Jalen Green, then why not trade back with OKC and get 6 and 16, or trade back with Golden State and get 7 and 14? Like, that should be an option. And people are going to be like, well, we already have a lot of young guys anyway. Look, there's, I think, 11 guys under contract going into the offseason for the Magic. I mean, maybe a couple of those guys you'll end up re-signing, like maybe Mo Wagner or something. But you still got room on the roster for young guys. You got room on the roster for veterans that you need to sign. I would, and so I'm not going to trade for Colin Sexton, but I would think about trading back. If you're not going to be able to move up and get Jalen Green, there's some really good guys that I would deem to be underrated that you can trade back and get, that probably are actually as good, if not better, players than guys that are going to be drafted ahead of them.
And then Al, just to spin it to you, are you open to taking back a bad contract? Is that the right pathway to kind of find a way to move up into the draft?
I definitely would. I think you can never assure yourself of what we think Jalen Green is, which is it's the closest thing to a sure thing for the Magic, right? So if that's what it takes, I'm really okay with that, because we have a ton of cap space next summer. But for what? If we have a bunch of young guys and we don't make the playoffs again, you're not going to get a start coming to Orlando. It's just not going to happen. So the best way to secure that is, hey, let's take a bad contract for 1 or 2 years, but get a guy that you really like in Jalen Green or heck, Cade, whoever it may be, to Orlando. So yeah, that would be a no doubter for me.
Now, I was reading a report earlier today. So it's crazy because mock drafts from all these different outlets, no one's reading out of the same book. Everyone has like their own thoughts and philosophies and wisdom of who they think is going to go where. But I found it interesting because Sam Amico today stated that, Kuminga had a really good workout with the Cavs, really good workout, and could be a potential pick for the Cavs. At the same time, Jonathan Wasserman is saying that, a lot of these front offices are getting scared of Jonathan Kuminga. They don't think that he can be professional enough, and they don't think that, he's going to be able to have the drive and the ability to really fill that build and that body that he has, and has him dropping all the way to 7. So, Adam, if your choice is between Jonathan Kuminga and Scottie Barnes, and this question is coming in from D-Dog Magic and W256. Might be not very long name, but who are you selecting between the two? Who is a safer pick, Jonathan Kuminga or Scottie Barnes?
I think it's still Kuminga. Barnes, for me, look, the Magic already have kind of the forward positions covered from a defensive perspective, right? You have Jonathan Isaac, who is a walking defensive player of the year candidate if he actually can stay on the court. And then you've got Chuma Okeke as well, who we know can defend very well. And so when I look at Scottie Barnes, he's like 6'9", he's got like a 7'2" wingspan, I think. But he can't shoot. Like, his shooting mechanics are awful. It would take a ridiculous amount of just rehab. You have to build the shot from the beginning. The man can't shoot. And then from a scoring perspective, he needs the ball in his hands so much to actually be effective. Unless you think this guy is going to be Giannis Antetokounmpo on offense, I just would not go for Scottie Barnes. And I know people say, Barnes competes. He's got a very high motor. You know what? Other guys in the draft do the same thing. And I don't want to keep saying Moody. It's getting really annoying that almost that I have to keep repeating it. But I think Kuminga showed, well, first off, Kuminga playing in the G League is higher competition than the competition Scottie Barnes went with in college. With that G League bubble, there was some very, very, very good, good rosters in there from guys that had a lot of international experience or young guys trying to make the league. And so Kuminga, his shooting form is a lot better than Scottie Barnes. I put it that way. Kuminga didn't shoot it great from 3-point range, but the possibilities are there. And I just think his skills on both ends of the floor overall work better, not just for the league, but also from the Magic roster perspective. I think Kuminga could fit in better than Barnes would.
I would agree. I think Kuminga would have the better fit. I think what intrigues me about Scottie Barnes is the fact that, he is able to play, 1 through 5, maybe potentially 5. 1 through 4, maybe potentially 5. I like the fact that he can handle the ball a little bit. I like the fact that he sees himself as kind of a point forward. It just does, there's a lot of question marks with the shooting. And do you really want to add another player into your young roster already that struggles with the shooting? So I'm gonna kick it to you. I already see you shaking your head, so I kind of know which way that you're gonna fall. If it's between Kuminga and Barnes, which way are you sliding?
It's going to be an easy one. So we've had this debate the last few episodes. And again, a lot to like about Barnes, the high energy, the way that he plays the game. It's again, you get excited by seeing him play on the court. Like, you think about Cole Anthony and him together on the court. That would be amazing to watch. But again, we as a team, we cannot afford that right now. We have way too many guys that do the same thing, that are high energy, play defense, are long, but cannot shoot the ball. So I would go with Kuminga because of the potential that he has. He can shoot a little better. And again, the ceiling is much higher to me. I can never see Barnes being anything better than Aaron Gordon. And I'm talking about Orlando's Aaron Gordon. So, again, my opinion is go with Kuminga. I think it's more of a chance to get a star player in this league than Barnes would be.
Yeah, so Kuminga has already worked out for the Cavs. He was in Toronto today, working out with them. And then so I would imagine if he's working out with Toronto and they're in Tampa, that just logistically the next step would be to stop by Orlando and kind of work out there. So hopefully we hear a little bit more about, how that workout went. Now, Adam, we're going to jump into our fire drill where we're going to ask you a couple questions. Doesn't need to be fast paced, but we're just going to send you rapid questions back to back. Okay. So this first one is favorite Orlando Magic player of all time.
Penny Hardaway. It's
good answer.
It's pretty easy. The first Magic game I ever attended, it was in the 1997 playoffs, Game 3, when Penny put up a 40 spot, and I thought Ronnie Cycli died, but the Magic won the game. So that man, I love that man. So he's going to be a future Magic head coach one day. Not yet, but it's going to happen.
Were you on the fence for him becoming the next head coach of the Orlando Magic? Were you for it or against it? What side of the Civil War were you on?
I was very for it, and it almost had nothing to do with the Magic fanhood. Honestly, like I really wanted to put that aside, because if you look at just his journey, he didn't want to get involved in coaching, And then if anyone's seen the E60 piece from years ago, he got involved in middle school coaching because his friend was sick. And then from there, he got into high school, and now he's had success there and in AAU, and now he's in Memphis. And the man really loves that area. He loves his alma mater, and he really genuinely wants to win an NCAA title. And hopefully he does that so that then he could take this Magic job. But and look, Jamal Mosley is showing that he's a player's coach. He wants to develop. He wants to make these guys not just great guys on the court, but great guys off the court. And Penny kind of operates in the same way. It's just Penny has that experience of being literally at one point the best player in the NBA to then, having all these decimating injuries that curtailed what should have been a Hall of Fame career to still being able to grind it out for like another 10 years on a bum knee and still have a fairly respectable NBA career. So he has kind of all spectrums covered from an NBA perspective. He knows what it's like to be a star. He knows what it's like to be a rookie. He's had success from a rookie level as well. So, I think he's going to be an awesome NBA head coach one day. He just didn't feel like he wanted to do it yet. He has unfinished business in Memphis, and hopefully when that time comes for him to go, to hop into the NBA, it'll be with the Magic.
Yeah, and I hope so too. My fear with his passion for Memphis is that it also feels as if Memphis feels entitled and a responsibility to be also. So my fear is one day him deciding to be the head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies. Who knows? Now this next one, I kind of feel like I already know where your response is kind of going to go with this one, but 1995 Orlando Magic team versus 2010 Orlando Magic team. Who wins?
It's the 1995 Orlando Magic because I don't think the 2010 Magic team is better than the 2009 Magic team that actually made it to the NBA Finals. But there's a lot of people that disagree with me, including former Magic players like JJ Redick. They think 2010 is better than 09, but I disagree. But from a 1995 perspective, maybe 2010 has a slight depth advantage, but who on the 2010 Magic is guarding Penny? And then you have a physically imposing Shaq against Dwight, which look, Dwight versus Shaq when Shaq was kind of over the hill, when Dwight was at the peak of his powers,
still giving problems.
If you have a prime Shaq going up against a prime Dwight, it's prime Shaq. Like we can't. And then you still, that 95 team was a very modern team where you had guys that could shoot like Nick and 3D and Brian Shaw. And then you still had, Horace Grant hitting 18-footers, maybe not the prettiest thing in the world, but he would fight for rebounds. It'd be interesting to see how that Rashard Lewis Horace Grant matchup would go. But and then you'd probably have Nick guarding Hito, but I'm taking 95. I am.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a tough game. We wish we could watch that game and see kind of how that would turn out. It would be fun for Magic fans, but I agree with you. I think the 95 team for sure takes it. Two more for you before we wrap up. So first one, if you weren't an Orlando Magic fan, what other team would you be a fan of in the NBA?
It's actually probably wouldn't be that difficult for me. It'd be the Philadelphia 76ers. So I'm already a Phillies, Eagles, Flyers fan from a Philly perspective. When my dad's side of the family migrated from Greece to the U.S. back in 1970, it was in Philadelphia. So they were in Philadelphia from 1970 to 1985, and then when the time came for my dad and my uncle to move elsewhere, they picked Orlando. So, but I kept kind of that Philly diehard root stuff. So it'd be the Sixers, and yeah, it'd be Philly. It'd be the Sixers.
So let me ask you.
I don't know why I thought that, just because I know that you have some Greek roots in you. I don't know why I was thinking Milwaukee.
Me too.
I was thinking Milwaukee.
I love Giannis Antetokounmpo, but I like Philly, man. I always put the Magic first. I'm a diehard Magic fan. I'll cry like a little girl, like a little baby when the Magic win the title. But if say like the Magic disbanded or something, like I'd pick the Sixers. It wouldn't be too tough to do that.
Makes sense. Last one for you. So, favorite memory during your time covering the Magic?
Man, gosh, we had. I've got a list. So, covering Orlando Summer League's fun. If you've never been able to go to Orlando Summer League or cover Orlando Summer League, it's fun. But from an actual moment perspective, oh man, it's probably going to be the Tobias Harris dunk game winner against OKC. So when that happened, the way the media seating worked is you were actually up in the upper bowl. So sometimes if you didn't get into the elevator in time when the game ended, you actually would make it to the locker room. So there's a situation where you're sprinting to the elevator to get into the locker room, and it was pretty crazy. But there's been some funny people that have been in that locker room. Like you have Kyle O'Quinn was just a one line machine in that locker room, and I'll always remember that my first media interview ever was DeQuan Jones, and little did I know he'd actually make the Magic roster that preseason when nobody expected it. But I'm going to go from just a moment. It's going to be that game where we beat OKC, because the locker room was buzzing. There were some. Unless you go into a locker room after just a moment like that, like it's really tough to explain it.
That must have been a crazy moment, because when we asked that same question to Philip Rosman, right, he gave us that exact same response. He actually mentioned that you and him were both in the elevator together.
Yeah, it was. Him, I, and I think Zach Oliver. I think we were just grabbed our bags and our laptops, and usually security does a good job of actually holding the elevators for us media, and they did. We made it, but because otherwise, then you're just waiting like with everybody else to get down the elevators. But it's fun. You gain just a bigger appreciation for just how the NBA operates and just how great these guys are, be it through watching them through kind of practice situations, be it being able to watch them up close, maybe if you're lucky for a close media seat. And then just seeing just all the pressures they got to deal with, all the attention they got to deal with. And it's fun. It's if you want to be an aspiring journalist or writer and you want to cover the league for a living, it's a fun experience for sure.
Now, Adam, just to wrap this up, let's get your final predictions. What do you think ends up happening? Let's put it on the record. What are your final predictions? If we're taking a look at the Golden Snow Globe, looking into the future, what will the Magic do?
Oh, man.
Put your name and stamp on it.
You know what? I think Weltman's going to go for it. I think he's going to trade. He's going to package 5, 8, and the Bulls pick with to jump up to 2 to Houston to get Jalen Green. I think he's going to do it. And then we're going to probably take back a bad contract like Eric Gordon, but it's whatever it's going to take. I think we're trading up to 2 and we're going to get Jalen Green. And I think we're actually going to keep 33. And I'll say we draft Jason Preston, the local guy from went to the University of Ohio. So
I like it.
That's my prediction. I'm ambitious. I hopefully they are too.
I like it. That's it. Make it happen. Speak it to existence is now all over the air. So hopefully it does happen. I agree with you. I think that if you're going to swing big, right now is the time to do it. Adam, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. If you want to hear more from Adam, please check out his podcast, Opinion Pops Podcast, available on all social media platforms.
Yep, everywhere. Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, everywhere. Whatever you can hear a podcast, it's you can hear the Penny and Pops podcast for sure.
Awesome. You're very active on Twitter. What is your Twitter handle so that they can follow you there too?
That's the most underrated statement of the show. I am very active on Twitter, sometimes too active, but it's at Papageorgiou MBO. And it would be my entire last name, Adam Papageorgiou, but Twitter only allows 15 characters instead of 16.
Yeah, that's too much. That's too much. We don't want anyone to misspell in, not be able to be able to track you down. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. It's a wrap. Till next week.
Thank you for listening to the OZone Podcast, the voice of Magic fans. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the OZone Pod. And remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on all your favorite podcast listening platforms.